Okay, good evening, guys. Welcome to the class. In the last class, we discussed about a couple of things. Let us revise that one. Let's have a quick recap, and then we will start with today's session. Okay. In the last class, we discussed about what is data, and we understood and we had this point. Any meaningful information around us is called as a data. So, what are the meaningful information that is around us? It could be, our age, or that age is represented in number format. It could be our name, and and our name is in the form of a text, and also our photos. All these are, information which is around us, and these information can be called as data. And also we discussed about what does the data, or why does the data need to be stored. And we saw some solid examples, and we understood that data helps in decision making and problem solving. And if it is not stored, it is a loss of data, or it is wasted. One classical example, we saw that banks must always store our each and every transaction, so that we can withdraw money at any point of time. If banks are not storing the data, then we would lose money, and we would lose a lot of assets. So one strong reason why do we have to store data is a real-time example that is mentioned here. And also we understood that in the olden days, how the data was stored. We understood that in the olden days, data was stored in the form of papers and files. And modern days, in the recent times, maybe from in the year from 2000, we were able to store data in the form of in the databases, and these databases are digital storage. So instead of writing the cricket scores of all our cricketers in a diary, we can have it in an application, and CrickBus as the database, so that it has all the scores of all the cricketers, and millions of users can see the cricket score at any point of time. We also understood what are the different types of data. The different types of data that we are categorizing are structured data, unstructured data, and semi-structured data. Under structured data, any data that can be stored in the form of a tabular form, we call that as a structured data. Unstructured data is that any data which is in a free form, which cannot be stored inside a tabular form. We call that as an unstructured data. Examples for structured data are nothing but the student's marks table, and examples for unstructured data are nothing but the WhatsApp voice notes and YouTube videos. Semi-structured data, any data in between the structured data format and unstructured data format, we call that as semi-structured data. And semi-structured data resides in a data format of JSON or XML. This JSON can be abbreviated as JavaScript Object Notation file format. And if at all we are saving anything into a shopping cart, that gets saved as a JSON file, and that is nothing but a semi-structured data. Now, what we understood the next here was we understood what is inside a database. A database is like a digital cupboard, where inside this cupboard where we have a lot of tables, and each tables has a lot of rows and shelves. So in these rows and shelves, we can store data. So what is the table made up of? Table is actually made up of columns, and these columns are called as attributes, and rows, it is made up of rows, and rows are called as records. And we saw one example like an Excel sheet. What is the data fueling the new technology, or how is the data fueling the new technology? We understood about machine learning, where machine learning learns from the past data, where data is again the fuel, where we can see Netflix recommendation, Amazon's recommendation. Deep learning handles complex data, where we are able to solve Face ID and self-driving cars. We were able to see it. Natural language processing, where it understands human language like Google Translate and ChatGPT. Gen AI, generative AI creates a new data by, we can write new essays, new thoughts, and DALI images is helping us to create new images. And AI is useless without the data. Data is the fuel, and AI is the engine. We were discussed, we discussed all these things, and we wrapped up. Now, in today's session, I'm going to cover one important topic called as SQL. Now, what is a SQL? See, we understood the importance of data. What is data? We understood where the data is getting stored. We understood the data is getting stored in the database. In order to speak to the database understand one language called as SQL language, or we call it a structured query language. So in order to speak to a database, we use this language SQL, and let us understand what are the things that it has to offer. SQL can be abbreviated as, let me increase it. Is this okay? SQL can be abbreviated as structured query language. SQL can be abbreviated as structured query language. Okay, so what is this language doing? This language is used for interacting with the database. We understood what is data, we understood what is database. Database is a digital storage where we can store the data. In order to speak to the database, we use this particular SQL language. So what is the SQL helping us to do? It is a language. It is a language used for interacting with the data, used for interacting with the database. Also, let us understand what are the other things that SQL can do. What are all the things that SQL can perform? What are the operations it can do? What are the actions it can do? Let's understand that one. What can SQL do? Let's list down what are the things it can do so that you will be able to gain some bigger or an eagle view. The first thing is that SQL can execute queries. SQL can execute queries on a database, meaning it is helping me as an individual, as an user, as a data engineer to speak to the database and get the things done. So SQL can execute queries on a database. If you ask me what is a query, queries are nothing but, set of instructions that you write in SQL language. We call that as a query. I repeat, what is a query? Set of instructions that we write in a SQL language, and that set of instructions is nothing but a query. So SQL can execute queries on databases. That's the first point. The second point is that SQL can retrieve data from a database. Now, any moment when you're trying to access any Amazon application, say for example, you're trying to access an Amazon application. In this Amazon application, when you are trying to load all these products that you are seeing on the screen are getting loaded from the database. It is retrieved. All these data have been retrieved from the database, from Amazon database, and it is getting displayed in the Amazon application. That's what we see here. SQL can retrieve data from databases. So whenever you're trying to access any application, by default, there is a SQL query triggered or executed. It is pulling all the data from that particular Amazon database and trying to load it on our screen so that we can see all the respective data. So SQL can retrieve data from a database. What else it can do? SQL can also insert records in a database. What does this do? SQLs can also insert a records in a database. Say, for example, you have this particular, Facebook application. In Facebook application, we are trying to post we are trying to post a photograph, or we are trying to write some post, and then, trying to post it on the Facebook wall. That it is nothing but, we are trying to create one, we are trying to insert a record, we are trying to insert a value inside the Facebook table so that that particular record is there in our Facebook wall. So SQL can also help me to insert a record or insert a value, or help me save a value in a table or in a database. The next thing is that SQL can update records in a database. What do you mean by update? Now we all know Aadhaar application, Aadhaar. Now there is a lot of issues that Aadhaar sometime, at the beginning of the time would have given a wrong phone number, and now we want to update that particular phone number to the old phone number to the new phone number. So in the back end, whenever there is an Aadhaar admin trying to update our phone number in the back end, there is a SQL that is getting triggered, that is getting executed, where that SQL is, updating the records in the particular database or in a table, where it is trying to replace the old data with the new data, where it is trying to update the old data with the new data. The next thing what SQL can do is SQL can delete records from a database. We all have come across this one. We have received, we receive a lot of junk and spam emails, and we want to delete all those emails, so that we want to save space. So when we are deleting that one, behind the scene, behind the curtain, there is a SQL query getting executed, and it is deleting all the email records from our database, so that we don't want to see that in our inbox. The next thing is helping us to do is SQL can create a new tables in a database. Say for example, we want to create a sign up. We want to create a new account in Facebook. There it is trying to create one new table, or it is trying to create one new record, so that our values or our account is there in the Facebook. So SQL can also help us create new table in a database. And then SQL can create views in a database. What does this mean, Karthik? What is this telling? SQL can create views in database. Now we all have internet banking. In the internet banking, when we pass on our user ID and password, we can get access to our banking site. We can get access to our internet banking site. Likewise, that view, whatever you have received, is that only your account details you can view. You cannot view somebody else's account details. So SQL can create views, only your account details you can view it. But there is something called, a bank officials or bank admin can have access to all the account details of all the account holders in their respective bank. So SQL can help us create a view only for an account holder. It can create a view for an admin. It can create view for different roles and responsibilities. It can create view. And SQL is a main person, or SQL is a main language which is helping us to create views in a database. Now we understood what is SQL. We understood what can SQL do. Let us understand a little bit about what is a database. What is a database? What is a database? Now very simple, as I told you, it is a place. Database is nothing but it is a place where we are going to store all related information. Let me write this. It is a place where we are going to store all related information. Now let me give you an example. We all have a refrigerator in our home. In this refrigerator, you know we keep a lot of fruits, vegetables, and sometimes we keep also some dry fruits, and not many things we keep. All food related items we keep in our refrigerator. But can we place our fabric inside our refrigerator? That does not belong to that particular refrigerator. So I want to reiterate this point. Database, it is a place where we are going to store all related information. So whatever relates to that particular database, whatever relates to a refrigerator, we store there. Whatever relates to a wardrobe or a cupboard, we store there. We don't place or save unrelated informations in certain places. So database, it is a place where we are going to store all related information. The next point what I can give you here is database is a place, or I can say it is a media which can store the data in systematic and organized manner. What does this mean? Say in database we cannot dump data inside the database. It should be neatly systematically organized way only we can store the data. So I can also say that database is a place, or it's a folder, or it's a medium where I can store the data in a systematic and in a organized manner. That is what we can understand at this point of time what is a database. So database is a place or a media which can store the data in systematic and organized manner. Now let us take up another point. What does a database do? What does a database do? Let's understand this. What are the things that a database do? The database does the following thing. Let's understand one by one. The basic operation that can be performed on the database are as follows. What are the things it can do? The first thing is that database can create and insert a table. So let me say database can create and insert a table. That's the first operation it can do. What is the second operation it can do? It can read the data from the database and also retrieve the data. If I wanted any data from the database, it can read and also fetch the data or retrieve the data from the database. That's the second operation that a database can do. And then database can also update or modify a table or a particular data inside a database. Database can also drop, meaning it can delete a table, or it can delete a value or a data from the table. Now, in general terms, what are the operations that a database does? It is creating a table, inserting a table, reading the data from the table, retrieving the data from the table, updating the data, modifying the data, dropping the data, deleting the data it is doing. If you can tell all these things in technical terms, this all four operations in technical terms, we call that as a CRUD operation. This operation are universally known as CRUD operation. Why these four operations are called as CRUD operation? C stands for create, R stands for read, U stands for update, and D stands for delete. That is why all these, instead of saying create, insert, read, retrieve, update, modify, drop, and delete, these operations are uniformly or universally known as CRUD operation. Okay, what does the database do? The database, in simple terms, performs a create, read, update, and delete, and that we call it in universally called as CRUD operation. The next topic is, what is DBMS? What is DBMS? Let me give you an and definition, and then I will explain. What is this DBMS? DBMS is abbreviated as database management system, or this database management system, we can call this as a software. We can also call this as a software. So DBMS, abbreviated as database management system, it is a software that will allow the users to perform three operations. What are the three operations this DBMS is helping us to do? This DBMS is a software, and it allows the users to perform three operations. What are the three operations? The three operations are, it is helping the user to create the data, maintain the data, and share the data. So DBMS is a software. It is abbreviated as database management system, and it allows a user to do three operations: create the data, maintain the data, and share the data. Now, let me give you some examples of a DBMS. Examples of DBMS are your Microsoft Access. Say, for example, right click. If you want to click on new, you have something called as Microsoft Access Database. This is a DBMS. Okay, so let's get back to it. So Microsoft Access is one DBMS, And the next thing is that we have IBM's DB2, we have IBM's DB2, and we have another application by name Fox Pro. All these are all these are DBMS, where it performs three things: create the data, maintain the data, and share the data. Okay. Now, one point I'll give you: database is a software. Database is a software which is used to DBMS, like database management system is a software which is used to maintain and manage the database. If you want to maintain and manage the database, we need to have one software. That software name is called as database management software or database management system. Okay. Now let us understand the nitty-gritty details. Let's take up a diagram and I will explain how this DBMS is looking like. Okay. Let me take up this diagram. Okay, if you can see the diagram here, there is a diagram here. This diagram is called as DBMS. Let's understand what is DBMS and all the things. This DBMS is a database management system. It is a software where the software is helping me to maintain the database. Imagine this cylindrical shape that you are seeing. Imagine that to be a database. That is what we have given. The cylindrical form is a database, and in order to speak to this database, we use a language by name query language. Imagine this cylindrical form is called as a database, and in order to speak to this particular database, we use a language by name query language. And inside this cylindrical form or inside the cylindrical shape, as we understood, that is a database. Inside this database, the files, the data is stored in the form of a file. The data, could you see everything? There is the data inside this DBMS is stored in the form of a files. And there is also two beautiful things that is available in this DBMS. One thing is that it gives us security, meaning any intruder, any third person who don't have the access cannot access the data. Okay. And it has another feature by name authorization, meaning people who have the valid user ID and password and the credentials can only access the data. So this gives a comprehensive understanding about what is a DBMS. DBMS is a place where database is residing, and it is a place where the database is residing. And to the database, if I want to communicate, I should be using a query language. And inside this DBMS, the data is stored in the form of a files, and it also offers security and authorization. Security: no intruder can access the data without the right credentials. Authorization is only with valid username and password. You can connect to this particular DBMS. Okay, so let us take down some points so that this will be helpful. That diagram I will attach it later. So let's take up some quick points. What are the points that we can take? Security and authorization. Security and authorization are the two important key features provided by the DBMS. And we use something called as query language to communicate or interact with the DBMS. Okay, so let us take the diagram. I will copy it and I will paste it here. Okay. What is the next point that we discussed? We also should discuss, the data inside this DBMS is in the form of files. DBMS stores the data in the form of files. Okay. Now you should understand that DBMS is an outdated technology. DBMS is an outdated stack in the current tech world. But this one is very important to understand the next topic. because this DBMS is giving birth to a new technology, is giving birth to a new tech stack, where that tech stack is where 99.99% in the industry we use that one. That the new tech stack where this DBMS is obsoleted, we don't use it anymore. But the new technology that we are using, we call that as relational database management systems, or in simple words, we call that as RDBMS. Now, what is this relational database management system? When already database management system is there, DBMS is there, why did we go to RDBMS? There are some drawbacks here in this diagram. We will try to overcome the drawbacks. While overcoming the drawbacks, we got to achieve a new technology by name a relational database management system. Let's understand that one in greater detail. Okay, let me show you a diagram and then we will be able to proceed further. Here in this diagram, where this is called as an RDBMS. This is called as an RDBMS. The same concept, this cylindrical shape, what you're seeing, is acting like a database, and the entire green block that you're seeing is a software. That software is called as RDBMS, or Relational Database Management System, where in order to speak to the database in the DBMS, we were using only a language by name query language. But in here in RDBMS, we use a language by name structured query language. That's the first important point that you need to understand. And the data inside this particular RDBMS is no more stored in files, but the data in RDBMS is stored in the form of tables. It is stored in the form of rows and columns. It is stored in the form of a tabular data. And also the data has the database has a security and authorization. Security, no intruder can access the RDBMS, and authorization is provided only with valid username and password. They can access this RDBMS. RDBMS is the latest tech stack that most of us, 99.99% in the industry, we use RDBMS only. Now, let us understand in a theoretical concept what are the things that it is offering. So, let's put this diagram and take down some points. What are the points that we can take down? Relational database management system. Relational database management system is a collection of program that allows the users to do four things. Relational database system is a collection of program, or it is a software that allows the user to do four things. What are the four things? The four things are nothing but it allows a user to create the data. Next thing, maintain the data. And the third thing, share the data. And the last important thing is that it allows to relate the data. If you can quickly go up, DBMS also does the same thing. DBMS is a software that allows a user to create the data, maintain the data, and share the data. But RDBMS is also a software which allows a user to create the data, maintain the data, share the data. And one extra thing what it is trying to do, it is helping us to relate the data. That is why we call this as a relational database management system. It is helping us to relate the data, meaning in a database there will be millions and millions of tables, and all these tables can be related. All these tables can be connected from one table to another table, and that is provided by RDBMS. That is why RDBMS is famous in the tech world. Okay. Now, in order to speak to this RDBMS, we use a language by name structured query language. Okay. So, what are the RDBMS that we have? that we have now. We have Oracle SQL, we have we have Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, and Sybase. All these are RDBMS. Now you should understand that in our class, I will be taking Microsoft SQL Server. I will help you install it, and we will run and work with Microsoft SQL Server only. Okay, the next point is RDBMS. RDBMS stores the data in the form of tables, stores the data in the form of tables. The next important thing is that we can interact with RDBMS using SQL. Now you are able to understand why we are learning SQL. In order to give you an insight why we have to learn SQL, I need to come right from data. I need to tell why data need to be stored, where should the data be stored, what are the types of data, what is inside a database, what is a table, what is SQL, what SQL can do, what is again a database, what does a database do, what is DBMS, what is RDBMS, and then only I have to reach a SQL, because SQL is a structured query language where it is helping me to speak to an RDBMS, and it can do a lot many things. Okay. Now one interview question. If you are attending interviews, this will be very helpful. Interview question is, when do we call any DBMS as RDBMS. Okay, that thing I can say that if any DBMS supports minimum six card rules. What is this card rule? Okay, there is a person by name Dr. E.F. Cards. That person has given some rules. That rules are 12 to 15 rules. That is not in our scope, but if you are interested, inquisitive, you can go and learn about what are those 12 to 15 rules. But as per the definition, as per the interview, you should say that if any DBMS supports that minimum six card rules, then that DBMS can be called RDBMS. Okay, so you should be in a position to understand that any DBMS can also be called as an RDBMS, provided if it obeys minimum six rules. Okay, this is your interview question. Okay, so we will stop here, and in the next class, we will be studying more about what is a relational model, what are tables, and many other things.